I'm unmuted. We are live for another edition of our Believers Faith Fellowship online virtual church campus. So last week we were in session 1 of Healing Hearts, a compassionate conversation about handling grief through the holidays. And we are back for part 2. But before we get into part 2, before I bring the guests on, before we jump into the conversation that everybody wants to hear, I have a couple of things, just a couple of housekeeping rules. Welcome to our online church. If this is your first time, we love having new people, so please feel free to deeply engage in the chat. Welcome back if you are a regular returning member of our online church. If you are watching or visiting us on replay, welcome and welcome back. Thank you for checking out the stream. If you are sending this to somebody, if you are thinking about sending this to somebody, if you thought about sending this to somebody last week and forgot to send them the Healing Hearts Part 1, go ahead and make sure you reach out to that person, send it to their DM, shoot them a text, let them know that the live stream is happening. We are here just like we are most Tuesdays, live right now at 7 p.m. Like I mentioned, we are Believers Faith Fellowship. We are led by Pastor Jason and Lady Barbara Scales. We've been around in the Middle Tennessee area for a while, but we are expanding our church to the online virtual sphere in a more intimate way. We're doing church beyond just Sundays. We're doing church beyond just Wednesday in-person gatherings. We are trying to make sure that the spiritual nourishment you need and the practical life experience that you get when you are in the building of Believers Faith Fellowship, it's happening during the week, no matter your geographical location. So that said, where are you watching us from? Are you in Middle Tennessee? Are you someplace else? Let us know in the chat. And while you're there, while you are there in the chat, I want you to drop a flower. I want you to drop a flower emoji, because Psalms 56:8 says this: you keep track of all of my sorrows. You have collected, this is the NLT version. You keep track of all of my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. So often when we think about grief, we think about all of the heavy emotions that come with it. But I asked you to put a flower in the chat because, what does it go? April showers bring May flowers. So the tears that we sow because of the losses that we have and the grief that we experience will flower and water the ground and flower areas of our lives that we have yet to realize, because that scripture is true. The Lord really does deeply care for us. The Lord deeply cares for us. He deeply cares for you. He knows where we're at individually in our seasons of grief, individually in our seasons of loss. So drop the flower emojis in the chat, because we are going to experience a renewal from the grief and from the loss that we have. So part 1 was last week with Mama Lisa. I affectionately call her Mama Lisa. We will have her coming back on, and we have some guests happening later on in this week. Mama Lisa is going to do a recap. You might be watching us on Facebook. You might be watching us on YouTube. You might be watching us on our live stream via our website, which is online.bfftn.org. So online.bfftn.org. There is a watch live button. If you're watching us via the website, we can still see your comments. We can still see your engagement. We still want to love on you from over there. So we have multiple ways for you to watch, no matter how you might be catching this stream, and we love you for it. And I think that's it. I think that's all of my housekeeping items. I'm sure some of my regulars, if I forget anything, they will let me know, and then I'll spin the block at the end. But without further ado, I definitely want to bring on our main lady, Mama Lisa Sanders. She has been so amazing as it relates to walking us through this particular journey, this sensitive journey of handling grief through the holidays. And so many of us are going to go into family situations, familiar situations, triggering situations. And so we want to put an end cap on what we started last week. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mama Lisa. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for all of the information. I have my notepad ready because that's how I take my notes. And so, I'm ready to get my information going.
Well, thank you so much, Tricia. Last week, I just want to thank you again for inviting me on to speak on the topic of grief last week. And I hope that those that were able to join gleaned something from it. I saw that we had some shares and some views even after last week's live stream. So thank you for those who have watched it. And those who have shared the information. I really appreciate it because this is an essential topic. Before I go into talking about grief tonight, there's one point that I do want to bring to your mind. Thanks, Tricia, for introducing us to the flower concept. Because as we speak tonight, I want you to just kind of savor in your heart that grief is not just about what you lost, but about what God will redeem, because He is faithful and He will help you through the process and He will redeem. Last week, we talked about grief, and I just want to just highlight a few points if you missed it, or if you want to just kind of, for a point of reference or review. We talked about grief as a normal response to loss. We talked about the fact that it can be loss of any type. We tend to have to think about loss in terms of death, but also grief can be also associated with any type of loss, be a life transition, be a dissolution of a relationship like a divorce, moving. I shared my journey of moving with the military. We moved 19 times during the course of our military life, and it was quite the journey of each time having to uproot and having to leave those friendships and the comforts of that community where I was settled. We talked about grief being a response, as I said, to loss of any type, but also it's essential that we do not rank grief. We have a tendency in our society that we rank grief thinking that death is the ultimate, but some people, it may not be a loss of a human counterpart, but for example, the loss of a pet, the loss of a job, the loss of status can equally cause those emotions that when someone passes. So we want to normalize the fact that grief can be associated with any type of loss. Also, I honed in on the concept of grief being something that we must feel. In order to heal, we must feel. And a lot of times people cannot seem to feel, or they elect not to feel, because grief is a very difficult process. It is a process. We're getting ready to have Thanksgiving, and a lot of us are going to be cooking those good Thanksgiving dinners. And we know that it's a process. Cooking that dressing is a process. You have to chop things. You have to stand on your feet. You have to stir it up and everything. That's the same way that grief is. It's not just going to come. We're not going to heal just quick, fast, in a hurry, but it takes the process to go through the process. But in the end, you'll have an end that maybe you didn't even think that was possible. Again, concerning the redemption of God and how He takes us through those journeys. I also share the fact that grief sometimes is like trying to walk in the dark without a flashlight alone. It feels just very discomforting, very disheartening, fearful, because you don't know where you're going. You have to take each day at a time. And grief is something that we need to do each day at a time. I don't say sometimes just each day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 second at a time for us to go through that process. So it's going to take some time. So it's not something that you can rush. It's not something that you should think about even rushing. Or as the cliche typically says, just get over it. There's no such thing in grief as just get over it. We move forward. We move on as best as we can. But it takes movement. It takes things that we need to do on our part, along with the strength of God that will help us to do that. And, a lot of times we have heard that cliche, just move on, just go on, just get over it. And that can be hurtful because people will delay because they try to be strong for others. They try to be strong for themselves. And it just doesn't work. It really doesn't work. So we have to be intentional about going through our grief process and knowing that it is going to take time. Again, it will be a process. Last week, we also talked about how we, during the holidays, we will experience a lot of different things, a lot of different reminders, a lot of different what we call triggers or trigger ambushes. For example, going into the store and hearing Christmas music and you're not feeling so jolly, or up on the housetop with Santa, but in the words of that other song, you're having a blue Christmas. So you might get triggered by hearing songs, certain smells like pies cooking or candles burning, those types of things that remind you of someone who has gone on, your loved one who has gone on, or certain traditions. And we're going to talk about how we can modify traditions tonight too, as well as a coping strategy. So those trigger ambushes are going to come. You can't predict them because they're just going to come out of the blue. And when they do ambush you, then don't run from it, but just know that it's part of the process. And there's nothing wrong with you experiencing that emotion that comes along with it. Just, we're going to talk about how to have a coping strategy to handle it so that your emotions just don't get too out of control and you stay stuck. So know that those trigger ambushes are going to come. Now, since last week, I have had several questions. People contacted me after the session was over. And one thing that they wanted to talk about in terms of grief is not just, the death or the grieving of transition, but also loneliness as a part of their journey, and how they grieve loneliness and not having people around, or that being a secondary, what we call secondary grief emotion is loneliness. Someone's gone or passed away, they're no longer there. Or you've gotten a divorce and you're no longer there. So I want to talk a little bit about loneliness tonight. Put simply, loneliness is just being without, having a void down in your heart, and you do experience it. You experience your feelings of loneliness. And so at those times, it can be very difficult to find something that will soothe that loneliness or that discomfort. It's possible to be alone, but not lonely. So what can you do during those times? Well, I've chosen two things to talk about in terms of handling loneliness. One of them is connect, learning how to connect. When there's loneliness there, you just feel some kind of way. You feel like maybe you don't want to connect, or you do want to connect and somebody it doesn't want to connect with you. Those are the times when we walk by faith. That is part of that flashlight we were talking about, is shining a light on that component of trying to connect with someone. There are people that are out there that are willing to connect with you if you just choose to connect. It's a choice. At times, it's a choice to connect. And there are people that do want to connect with you. So choose connection. Choose connection. The second thing is you must communicate. Again, we can't heal what we can't feel. Neither can we heal what is not communicated. So when there's loneliness there, if you could find some way to channel that to someone that you trust and tell them that you're feeling lonely, that you do need that companionship, that connection with someone else, and that you're feeling what you're really feeling. It's essential, especially in these days and times, that we tell people, that we talk about how we're feeling. And a lot of times people are afraid of rejection, or that they're being a burden to someone in terms of communicating. Well, I can tell you a lot of times that is the opposite rather than the standard. People stand ready to help you, to be able to communicate with you, to share, to listen. And if that is the case, those who are comforting someone, there's just some things that we need to know too, as well, when we're dealing with people who are going through loneliness and grief, is that this is their story, it's their fingerprint, it's their thumbprint on their journey and what they're going through. So know that sometimes that when they're trying to communicate, that the words may not be able to be articulated the way that you think that they might be. Sometimes maybe somebody is just crying, but crying is a universal language. We know when someone is crying that something is there. So you might want to ask them a leading question. Say, you know what, I see your tears. Do you mind sharing with me what's going on? And that can very often open the door to help someone who is trying to go through that process. Also, trying to help them in a non judgmental way. Because when people are lonely and grieving, they are hurting. They are hurting. And a lot of times they might come across as brash or come across in a certain way that you might feel like taking it personal. But just please know that it's not personal. It's about that individual's feeling. And just know that they won't be like that always. So again, just realizing that it's their unique journey and knowing that it's not personal, it's their journey. Also, try your best if you're assisting someone is to get them out of the house. You know, I don't care if it's just to come to them and take them sit outside. Well, it's a little cold outside, but we can get a blanket or whatever. Or taking them out to just grab a cup of coffee, something very simple that doesn't demand a lot of energy and a lot of time or a lot of money, but just the ministry of, I call it the ministry of presence, being with someone, giving them those hugs. And again, just listening non-judgmentally, not trying to answer or trying to, sometimes we as a society, we look for absolutes and we try to rationalize and figure out and give answers that we really don't know sometimes are the truth or really not spirit led. But don't try to force it. If you don't know the answer or if you don't know the rationale or cliches that are given sometimes, just again, just don't say anything at all or just say, I'm sorry. That will help. That will connect with them and let them know at least that you're listening. So again, those are ways that we can handle some loneliness and connect. Also, I'm going to say one of the greatest things that we can do in terms of whether it's grief or whether it's loneliness and we're trying to fill those voids is volunteerism, is getting out, especially this time of year. There are places like, for example, I don't like to call them soup kitchens, but food ministries, homeless or things going on for the unhoused, people in your neighborhood who maybe they're older and they don't have anybody to talk to, going to a nursing home, those types of things. Because number one, it takes you the focus off of self and puts it on to others. And when I do something like that, when I have done something, we'll call it altruistic, meaning that we're doing something with a loving heart and with a giving heart and giving spirit, it really, really does something deep down in my soul. It really makes me feel good. And again, it takes me out of that seed of self-pity and woe is me, and helps to put things in perspective. So volunteering and doing service certainly will help you to be able to get that focus off of self and not wallow in your grief, your own grief. So those are some things that you can do to tackle loneliness and also help you when you're grieving. Some other strategies that we can do in terms of when we're grieving is we can journal. journaling really helped me, especially when I was going through some really difficult times with infant loss, infant and pregnancy loss. And I was able to take a piece of paper, a book that full of empty pages, and just simply write what I felt. I didn't try, and y'all know I'm an author, but I didn't try to be in the author seat at that time. At those times, sometimes the best I could do is would be Jesus. Lord, help me. When am I going to get over this? I'm mad. I'm angry. So journaling, just writing your feelings down and being okay with it. Now, sometimes we might have to go back and burn our journals a little bit later on, but journaling is very cathartic. It's very healing because it takes what's in our heart, put it on the paper. We can see it. We will have expressed it. And then, as I said, we can discard the pages or tear them up or burn them or whatever we want to do when we feel that release comes. So journaling is really a very good exercise that will help you when you're trying to deal with grief. Also, one of the things that is helpful too is meditation. And when I say meditation, I'm talking about meditation as it relates to the Word of God. It's finding scriptures that are about healing, that are about comfort, that are about peace, and reading those scriptures over and over, and just you can repeat them orally. You can exchange your name for, let's say, thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. You can exchange the word says, thy rod and thy staff comforts Lisa. Personalizing, making those scriptures personalized and being able to meditate on those words, especially when you don't know anything else to say. It's just to get in your word and try your best to read it. You don't have to sit down and read the whole Bible at one time. It's just meditating on finding you one or two scriptures. And, for the most part, if you have a Bible on with your phone, you can search scriptures. You can go through your Google and just Google scriptures about grief. If you have your Bible, your hardcover Bible, more than likely you have a concordance, and you're able to search that way. So that's another thing. And of course, prayer, being able to talk to God and to let him know how you feel. And you know what? We can't be ashamed about letting God know how we feel, because he knows what we're thinking anyway. He made us, so he knows what we're thinking anyway. And so talking to him and letting him know if you're mad, just let him know that, God, I'm angry. God, I don't understand. God, I know you're God, but I just really don't understand what's going on here with your sovereign will. This hurts. This really, really hurts right now. God, I know your word says that you're faithful, but God, I'm just feeling, I just don't know. And so as you begin to pray and just talk to him, then the conversation will eventually change. If you always try to put an element of gratitude in there as you're talking to God. God, I'm hurting, but God, I thank you. God, I don't understand this, but I thank you that my situation could be worse. God, I am hurting, but there are others that are out there that are hurting, Lord. And I ask that you bless them, bless others as you bless me to go through my journey. So, of course, prayer, talking to God. Also, there are just some things that we can do physically. We can get up and move. We don't have to go and run a marathon, but some days, especially those days when it's difficult to get out of the bed, to try our best to get up and do some type of movement. If it's nothing but stretching our arms or just walking from your bedroom to your kitchen, some type of movement. On those days where you're feeling a little bit better, then maybe put on your favorite music. Put on your favorite music. For me, I love praise and worship music, but also I'm a 70s girl. And so when I feel down, I will put on some 70s music, and I'll get up and I'll dance a little bit. dance around a little bit, because it takes me to a better place. It takes me to that place usually where I'm I was a teenager in the 70s. So, having fun, didn't have any bills, didn't have any concerns or worries. So it uplifts my spirits to be able to do that. So movement also helps. Okay. So there are a lot of different things that we can do, a lot of different things that we can do to help on our part to be able to move through that journey. Try to eat well during this time. I know there's a tendency to to just grab fast food or whatever, but it helps when we eat a good meal. If you can eat a good meal, if you find in yourself that you having problems with your stomach, your stomach, well, if you have to have something, at least try to eat something like soup or broth to help you maintain some type of energy, as well as drinking water. Drinking water will help, because we cry and we get dehydrated. So drinking water will really help you to be able to feel a little bit better. We also last week talked about times when grief is so tough that you can't navigate or manage it through your own doing. So if it gets to that point where you know that you need some help, seeking out a professional or someone who can help you, please do so, and do it unashamedly. There's nothing wrong with getting professional help. And you can do it on the front end, like when you first go through your grief journey, so that it doesn't get so bad. Or, when it gets to the time where it does get bad, please seek help to help you to go through that process, because a professional will be objective. A professional will help you to kind of see things in a different light, because a lot of times when we're grieving or we're lonely, we're just in this bubble and we can't see outside that bubble. And so a professional will help you, quote unquote, burst that bubble and to begin to see things with a different perspective. Also, sometimes you may need medication, and I'm not saying long term, but if there's depression, or there's anxiety or something like that is associated with your grieving, then sometimes you might need medication. Yes, it's okay to get medication. And again, like I said, it's not long term, but I kind of look at it like this. If something was wrong with your heart, something wrong with any other thing, then when you go to the doctor may prescribe some medicine, and they may say, you know what, you don't have to take this for a very long period of time. It's just to help you get over the hump until your symptoms start to dissipate or till you start feeling better. Not getting dependent on it or anything like that, but just short term. And if you find yourself getting dependent again, that goes back to maybe not doing other things to help you manage grief. You can't just take the medication and not just just sit and not do anything else, but doing the movement and different other things that will help you to also as well, in tandem with that medication and the advice of a professional like a doctor or a psychiatrist. If you go to a psychiatrist, they're going to prescribe medication to you. If you go to a social worker or a psychologist, then we're going to listen to you and we're going to talk, but we cannot prescribe medications, but we can refer you to your PCP or someone who can prescribe medications for you. Okay. Also, let's talk a little bit about Thanksgiving and Christmas are coming up. And those are times that are just riddled with tradition. So let's talk about how to navigate through traditions through this time. On Thanksgiving, probably some people have already started to prep for that Thanksgiving meal, Thanksgiving dinner, having company, going to someone's house, making those preparations for 2 days from now when that when that day will come. And some of you may not be feeling like doing all of that this year. It's okay. Give yourself permission to pare down. Give yourself permission not to, if you have been the one, let's say, who has been the host, is maybe this time you want to share with someone else that they can host. You just don't feel like it. Again, it goes back to those 2 C's: connecting and communicating. Or let's say that you do feel like doing the meal, but you don't feel like making 500 dishes like you normally do. Ham, lamb, rams, you name it. This is not the time, may not be the time to have all those dishes. Decide what is non-negotiable and move on, and know that you can live without all of those dishes, those food dishes, and all those preparation, literally washing the dishes. You can do without all of that. Also, being out in the crowds and going grocery shopping. This year, you might be able to go online and order your food and have them to deliver it to your house, so that you're not out in the stores being bombarded by the crowds. And there are other things, like, for example, maybe grandma was the one who gave the family prayer at the dinners. Yes, family prayer is still important, but it becomes incumbent on someone else to do the family prayer. It could be you. Stand there and cry for a minute if you have to. And if the only thing you can say is, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for grandma. She's no longer here, but we appreciate her life and her legacy and what she has given us over the course of time. We thank you, and we're going to enjoy this meal today in Jesus' name. It's okay. Simplify. Simplify. Christmas is coming. Christmas is a time where there's you can already feel some kind of way about, you typically hear people talk about not being, quote unquote, in the Christmas spirit. Well, when you're going through your grief journey, you definitely may not be feeling the Christmas spirit or any other kind of spirit. You just kind of feel feeling blah. Is to know that, again, modification will help you. It will help you. Let's say, for example, and I'm going to get off of somebody passing away, but let's say you have gone through the loss of a job or loss of income this past year, and you just are not able to buy things like you have in the past, and you have to change. There's an element there always that we feel guilty because we're not able to do what we want to do. But in order to survive is to know it's okay to modify, not have your little budget, not spend as much, make some homemade gifts. It's okay. Maybe somebody you're a good cook, and you can go in the kitchen and stir them up, a dozen cookies or their favorite cake. Number one, it takes you off of your mind, off of your grieving, being, settled in your grieving. But also, it's made with love, and it's made with intention, and it's the best that you can do. And it's okay. Be okay with simplifying. Be okay with simplifying. Going to visit people and going around. Well, maybe, you're just not feeling like it. Well, you have to set some boundaries about what you feel like you want to do or what you don't want to do. Setting some boundaries. Now, I will say this is a lot of times that we talked about anticipatory grief last week, being that grief that we will go through when we think that we're going to be out and about or whatever, or we're going to be facing the day, and we kind of get amped up over the expectation of the day. Well, I would say in setting boundaries, sometimes you could go through that anticipatory process, but I'm going to just kind of advise you to leave some room for what may happen or what may not happen. And just, you can try to go. But beforehand, know how long you're going to stay. Going back to the two C's of connection and communication. Communicate to someone that's going to be in the same environment is your plan. If it gets too hard, if it gets too much, then I'll be leaving within a certain amount of time. Or rescue me. You can have a code word for rescue you, moving you out of that environment, taking you out of that environment, and allowing them to try to minister to you, or to give you permission to say what you need to say. So connecting and communicating your needs. Also, what do I want to say here? Let me go to my notes, y'all. Mama Lisa's talking very extemporaneously tonight, so I got to sometimes at 65, I have to refer to my notes. Okay. Learning how to honor your loved one with a tradition. You could do things like, for example, I know some people, they like to light candles. Is you could light a candle with that person's name, in honor of that person's name. You can also have a candle, a large candle. Let's say you have friends and family that are around and they're feeling sad and going through their own grief journey. And to know when they're feeling, when they need some time, or they need to remember that person, is keeping a lighter there and allowing them to go light the candle whenever they're feeling that grief. And just know that is their symbol of knowing that they need, or they remember that person. And it's okay they don't have to say anything. It's just your way of knowing that that's what they need at that time. You want to, again, avoid overthinking, avoid overdoing at this time. Try to get some rest, utilizing those things like online shopping again, or online grocery shopping, or maybe you can assign someone to personally shop for you this year, or exchanging those gifts. Normally, I know we have a tendency to want to give gifts because we think that that's more meaningful. But again, simplify. Gift cards. Gift cards are always good. That $25 or $20 Visa gift card is always good for them to pick out what they want. A lot of people love Amazon. A lot of people love to go out to eat. So doing things like that instead of stressing yourself out about what you're going to buy, what you're going to do. One thing that we want to do too during this time is to look for resources. There are a lot of resources out there that can help us, a lot of online resources and a lot of physical resources too as well. And one of the resources that we have at BFF, which I am very much proud of as part of our ministry, is called Grief Share. And we have with us tonight, we have the facilitators of our own Grief Share group, Michael and Lisa Blakely. I affectionately call him God's servant Mickey and God's woman Lisa. And I want them to come on right now and tell you just a little bit about Grief Share as a resource that you could use if you need to connect. So Lisa and Mickey, if you guys can come on and talk a little bit about Grief Share.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Grief Share is a godsend. It really is. In Matthew 11:28 through 30, Jesus gives a promise that all you who are weary and heavy laden, if you come to me, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light, and I will give you rest for your souls. And so Grief Share is a way to yoke up with Jesus and learn more of him and learn about how to grieve properly, how to process it. I never knew how to do that until 7 years ago when my late wife passed. It is an awesome resource. You can go to griefshare.org and you can type in for a location 37037 and Christiana BFF will come up and you can sign up and you have just a plethora of resources on there. You can sign up to get a daily email that will give you a particular scripture, and those scriptures always seem to be tailor made for what you're going through that day. You have resources in there pertaining to how to process through the holidays. Mama Lisa's done an awesome job of touching on all the points on what to do and not do during this holiday season. And so I can't recommend Grief Share enough. It's a weekly program that's 13 weeks in length. And please, I would encourage everyone listening to go to griefshare.org, sign up through BFF Christiana, and either Pastor Jason or myself will see it and give you authorization to go through to those resources.
Thank you so much, Mickey and Lisa. We would like for you to just kind of be on the lookout. Those of you who are in our audience, is just to be on the lookout for our next start dates. It's like he says, it's 13 weeks, and you can. It's best to start at the beginning, but you can come at any time during that process, anytime during those 13 weeks. And we do have people who come back two times, three times, just as long as you need it, because it is a safe place for you to process that grief. We've had people just to be able to disclose and unburden themselves of what they had been carrying. And Mickey and Lisa do a fabulous job by combining the curriculum along with their own personal testimonies and their own personal stories about their journey through grief. Again, looking at them, it is a testimony of that loss is not about just what you lose, but it is about what God redeems. And to look at them is just amazing, because they do have some amazing testimonies, and they share very transparently. It's almost like that Jesus wept moment that we talked about last week, when Jesus' friend died and he cried over his brother Lazarus, but he also cried and mourned with his sisters Mary and Martha, with his friends Mary and Martha. So that's kind of the environment that Grief Share, you'll be in Grief Share. We provide the books and the materials. Also, you'll have, like he said, access to online, different things associated with our Grief Share program online. And with Grief Share there, I just highly advise you to get involved with it. Right now, we do offer it for free. And I'm like I said, I'm like a proud parent over our Grief Share program. We've gone through like 3 cycles now since we started, and each one of them have been very effective. So griefshare.org, it's there on the banner, as well as I think we'll probably drop it in the chat. So be on the lookout for when we start our next sessions. We're breaking a little bit for the holidays, but we will be back as far as Grief Share. So basically, we have shared about Grief Share, and we've shared about them about being one of the resources. And we have just a few more minutes to go. At this point, what I would like to do is just kind of see if anybody has any questions that they can drop in the comments. Or Tricia, do you have anything else that you would like for us to cover before our time is up tonight? Tricia, you're on mute.
Sure am. Sure am. I'm talking to myself. I was saying before, as people are typing, giving them an opportunity to type their questions in the chat or type their feedback in the chat. There were so many things that you mentioned tonight that I think it's important for us to just keep in mind. And if you join late, then I'm catching you up just a little bit on some of these gems and some of the jewels that were placed. First and foremost, one thing that the Blakeleys mentioned is that Grief Share is for as long as you need it. Mama Lisa said something on the first chat, on the first session, where basically we like to put time frames, especially in Western society, on what our grief looks like and how long we should be grieving. Corporate gives you a certain amount of time off, but when we have environments like Grief Share, it's for as long as we need it. One of the things that I think we run into in the Western society for opportunities like Grief Share, and Grief Share is an opportunity, is that sometimes we say, oh, I don't have time to do it. But for anybody who's experiencing something like a question mark, like, would this be something that's beneficial for me? You have to make time to choose you. We make time to go to work, and we'll stay at work until work is done, regardless of the sacrifice that it takes, regardless of the toll on our mental health. When are you going to choose you? And Grief Share is a wonderful opportunity and a beautiful expression for you to choose you and to support yourself in adequate ways while you're moving through the loss process. And it could be on a number of different ways. So if you don't know all of the ways that you can experience grief and all of the ways that you can experience loss, go ahead and spin the block on part 1. Go ahead and watch part 1 again. We do have one question that came up in the chat. And so if you are not on Facebook, I'm going to read it here for you. Let me just make sure I jump over to the website to make sure we don't have any questions over there. The question is, how can we set boundaries for those family members grieving, but not taking the steps towards recovery?
Can I clarify the question? Is the question about that in particular individual doing all they can to assist that person, but they're not moving forward? Or is it about you personally feeling drained by trying to? Well, I'll just address both, okay? Because they're kind of similar questions. Is how do you set boundaries? Boundaries is about recognizing needs of both individuals, and also recognizing needs and learning how to say no, or learning how to know when your responsibility starts and stops. As far as far as recovery is a choice. It's really a choice. And again, because grief is such an individualized process, and it's like, your own fingerprint on grief, it's hard to sometimes know what to do. But again, if it is beginning to drain you, you can only do so much to support people. Suggest some of these things, do some of these things that we talked about tonight, and like connecting and communicating. But if they're staying there, that's all you can do, is put yourself out there, because sooner or later, the longer you stay in the mix, the longer it's going to suck you in, and you're not going to be able to exercise good self-care around that. And the next thing you know is that you'll be grieving loss of self, because you have put yourself out there so much to support someone. So it'll be a mutual grief process. You'll be grieving loss of self and individuality, because you're so wrapped up in that. So you can only do what you can do against trying to support them, not trying to give absolute answers, or when they're questioning, learning the difference when things are personal and when they're not. Okay. Also, if they're not taking the steps towards recovery, again, recovery is about choice. It's about a lifestyle change, a choice. And the lifestyle change that we're talking about navigating, of course, is going through the process of grieving and the emotions that are attached to that, to being able to better manage and have those behavior changes that are associated with that. So that's what recovery is about. Recovery, again, is a process, and it can take some people just a long, long time. Try to exercise as much patience as you can with those individuals. And again, no, like if they're really snippy, if you're trying to talk to them, they're really snippy, then no, it's about that emotion. It's about that anger, that hurt, that disappointment. And it's not about you personally. but they just learning, they just are still holding on to that. And know when somebody might be having a trigger, when, you know, learning their ways, or learning things that might trigger them. And you might help them to try to bypass those. But also when they go through those triggers, it is again just offering comfort. Just offering comfort. Did that answer your question?
I'll let them take a second to respond in the chat. There was one question that came over on the website, and it is kind of serendipitous that you mentioned the connection, because the question was about loneliness and connection. And the question is around relearning how to connect. So you talked about choosing connection, but what are some strategies that a person can use or utilize in learning how to connect again after experiencing loss and then loneliness?
Okay. Well, I think one of the things is to just to understand those emotions and feelings that are associated with disconnection. There's of course fear, anxiety, things like that you just go through when you disconnect, feeling displaced. One thing I think is it's huge is connecting with self again. Is learning how to connect with yourself, okay, and putting it out there, you know, that about how you feel is dealing with those emotions and using those strategies to deal with those emotions about experiencing fear and anxiety. And learning, one of the things is using affirmations. For example, using affirmations is I can trust again. I can connect. I am worthy of connection. I don't have to be out here as an island. So using affirmations, and affirmations help boost yourself. And once you're boosting yourself and you believe something's that's gonna happen, you take that bold step of faith. And taking a bold step of faith may mean picking up the phone and calling someone who you haven't talked to in a long time. Two things can happen: is number one, they answer or they don't answer, or when they answer, it could be that moment where you feel that connection. And behind that connection, learn how to make a plan. Instead of saying, you know, it's great to talk to you, add a little extra to it. Can we meet for lunch next week? Or if they ask you, can they do something? Again, taking that bold step of faith is, yes, we can try. You can just say we can try. And doing that. And again, sometimes I think we go through the process of making things worse than they are before we even try. So that's the only thing that we can do is, again, is take those steps and try.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions that have come through. We did get an affirmative on, did you answer that question that came in on Facebook? So I think from a question standpoint, all hearts and minds are clear, as they say in church. I do want to take this opportunity to thank you, Mama Lisa. Thank you, Mickey and Lisa, for coming on and talking about healing hearts. So if you have not been on our sessions for the past 2, we've been having a compassionate conversation on how we handle grief and loss throughout the holidays, just in time, pew, 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 for us to go into Thanksgiving and put these words of advice into actual pieces of action. So that's our charge for everyone, no matter where we find ourselves on the spectrum of loss. So thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Lisa Blakely. And thank you, Mama Lisa, for coming to our online virtual campus for these last 2 sessions to have this conversation. We really, really appreciate it. And the information and the tools have been invaluable.
Can I just leave with some comforting
Absolutely.
scriptures tonight? Okay. Learn to trust and believe that, as Ecclesiastes 3:4 says, there is a time for everything, even grief, and this too shall pass. Also, Believe in your heart, as Hebrews 13:5 says, especially through these holidays and moving forward, that God will never leave you nor forsake you. And know that God is sovereign. He allows things to work for our good, even when it doesn't seem like it, but always for his glory. It's not about the laws, but it's about what he will redeem. And I'm anxious to hear these stories of how you were able to cope and to move forward through your own personal grief journey. I wish you a good time during these holidays. Do what you must to protect yourself, but you will make it through. I love each and every one of you.
Absolutely. Thank you for those scriptures. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. I do want to give you just 2 more bits of information. Number 1, there are multiple ways to give. We are a virtual church. We are an online campus, but we are an extension of an in-person church. So please consider partnering with us financially. You can follow the link to partner with us financially if you so decide to do so. And if you are really enjoying what we're doing here on the virtual campus, come back in December. We have 1 week off for December 3rd, but we will be back December 10th, 17th, and 24th. We have 2 special holiday editions happening on December 10th and December 24th. And then on December 17th, we are having the fellowship table, which we are bringing our Bible study series hosts back, and we are going to have a conversation about a lot of different things. I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give too much away, but definitely join us through December, especially if you are not in person anywhere. It's a wonderful opportunity, like we always say, to grow and strengthen your relationship with Christ, no matter your geographical location, and no matter if you have time to get into a physical building throughout the holiday season. So we thank you for coming on with us tonight for a healing hearts, a compassionate conversation on grief and loss. We thank you to Mom Lisa Sanders, our host, and then we thank you to our special guests, Mickey and Lisa Blakely. We will see you guys on December 10th, not on December 3rd, but December 10th. And from the campus leaders, the other 2, Malcolm and Latoya, and myself, Trisha, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you guys in December. God bless you and good night.